For those of you who want to some extent, understand why you have certain emotions, why you have certain desires, why society is the way it is, you must always examine the parents, history, culture. And without understanding the culture, there's a good chance that you'll fall into error, make lots of mistakes, and be punished because of them. The way we look at religion today, the way we look at human relationships, the way we look at basically everything today has taken about 600-700 years. The Western philosophy has been kind of under attack. Western psyche, people have been under attack. The culture has been under attack for almost 700 years. And to some extent, if you want to understand how your future is going to unfold, it's not a bad thing to kind of understand where all of us have come from, what influences or forces have been out there playing with us. About 300 years or so after Jesus died, there was a Roman emperor by the name of Constantine. And he did something really amazing. First, he had a dream. And in the dream, he saw the sun. And he saw a cross in the middle of the sun. And he wakes up from the dream saying, we need to become Christians. And of course, also for political reasons, because Christianity was gaining some power. Paganism was losing power. And all of a sudden, the Western world becomes slowly a Christian world. And it's a beautiful thing. It's what we call the Dark Ages for the next 1,000 years. If you want to know who you are, it's easy. You don't need therapy. Just read the Bible. You used to have wings in the Garden of Eden, very much like what Plato, the Greek philosopher, would say. You would always walk in the Garden of Eden, be in the sun, know the truth. You could do anything. No reprimands, no punishment. You'd be one with God, period. But something happened, and it wasn't really your fault. It was the fault of Adam and Eve. Your wings were clipped, you were sent down here. Easy philosophy of life. And your job down here is not to pursue happiness because it can't be found. You don't marry for happiness. You don't get a job for happiness. You don't have sex before marriage. You want to know your gender? Just take off your clothes. And what the mirror reflects back, that's who you are. There is no diversity. You are a sinner, period. And no one looks at life as this experience where you're able to find a place where you can be happy and prosperous. It doesn't work that way. Veil of tears. You work down here and you gain nothing but misery. And if you want to know where your happiness lies, it's when you die. And hopefully you've done some good work down here and you've had your faith. And when you stand before God, He says, well, I like you. Paradise is going to be where you're going to be. Very simple. There's a good element of shame, guilt. Communities are small. You don't challenge Christianity. You don't challenge the Bible. You don't put your parents in a nursing home. I does not exist. You live in the eyes of other people. People make you, people break you. It's not like today, where you got to figure out who you are, what you want to do, where you want to go. And it's going to take you a few lifetimes to figure all those things out. The Dark Ages, for example, everything was simple. It had its own problems. But you wouldn't suffer the sort of miseries that people today suffer from, loneliness and depression and various kinds of mental illnesses. But sometimes certain events happen in life, that destroys everything you believe in. Imagine you've been married for about 5, 10, 15, 20 years and you come to realize that your companion is in love with someone else and in fact has been in love with that person for a long, long time, way before you, and you just found out. Your definition of marriage changes, your definition of sex changes, love changes, who you are changes, everything changes. And once you understand, once you realize, you walk into your life with a good amount of doubt and skepticism, anger, hatred. Most of us in this class suffer from various cracks in life. You wake up, you have the flu, you're in a bad mood, and 2-3 hours later it's finished. But you're having your breakfast and phone rings and it's your mom. Dad died. The following month, the phone rings again. It's your sister. Mom died. 2 weeks later, your dog dies. In the next few months, just people or things die left and right. And these are huge events that happen in your life. And your psyche, your mind tries to figure things out. Why is this happening? But you can't figure things out. If you had any faith, it goes away. And the nice thing about the 1,000 years of Dark Ages is that when you walk around town, you don't find Buddhists, you don't find Hindus, you don't find Muslims, you don't find atheists. They're just Christians, period. Everybody thinks the same. But then there is this event. It's generally called the Black Plague or the bubonic plague. About half the population of Europe just dies. And people want answers, but there are no answers to be had. For those of you in this class who have read this particular book in the Old Testament called the Book of Job, it's a really, really, really good book. It's a miserable book, but it's a good book. It's a man who has faith, events happen in his life, and he loses his faith. He wants to die. He wants answers, but there are no answers for him. For the first time, he comes to realize that life is just unfair and God is unjust. How could all of a sudden 70 million people just die? The monks who live in a monastery, they all die. But the prostitutes in the brothels, they're all alive and prospering. So that's the first attack on Christianity, or I should say the human psyche. Your faith has suffered some cracks in it. You try to look for answers, but no answers. So you just sit there. So for those of you in this class who don't believe in God or religion, or you're skeptical about those things, this has nothing to do with you. You are an outcome of circumstances. A few years later, something even more devastating happens. Scientists are interesting people. They have faith, but they have faith in human reason. They have faith in facts. It doesn't mean that they don't believe in God or religion, but they're also devoted to their own intellect, rationality. And one of those folks happens to be Galileo. When you read Genesis, you find something very interesting. God creates everything. When it comes to us human beings, He breathes His own spirit into us. And then He says, I create all the things that human beings see for one simple reason, so that human beings can have dominion over all of them. Everything is created for us. We are at the very center of the universe. God doesn't do that for the sheep or the lions or the rats, only for us. When you go out on a date and you like someone, for the first few days or weeks, their eyes are lasered at you. They just look at you, nothing else, no one else. They're focused. And you feel good that despite all the competitions out there, this person is only interested in you. A couple weeks pass by, and as you're sitting and having coffee, you realize their eyes are wandering here and there. You're less interesting. You're less relevant. Try to come up with these elaborate stories to force interest, to force relevance. Galileo comes forth with this devastating news that the earth really is not the very center of the universe. We are a speck of dust in the middle of nowhere. There was a guy, early 20th century, Algerian philosopher named Albert Camus. He's also the product of 600-700 years of the Western culture being attacked by various events. He had argued that life is absurd. It is ridiculous. It doesn't care for any of us. You may want justice, you won't have it. You may want fairness, won't have it either. You may want to figure things out, you won't be able to. The world is in the middle of nowhere. Who guides us? Where is God's hand in the middle of all of this? Is our life without any purpose, without any meaning? Remember, for 1,000 years we believed that God lives inside us, the kingdom of God, the image of God. That He sits above, looks down, and everything happens for a reason. You get married for a reason. Your companion dies for a reason. You get cancer for a reason. But if we are a speck of dust in the middle of nowhere, things just happen randomly. Your parents don't divorce because of a certain reason. They just suck as human beings. You don't get sick because God wants you to learn something from it. That's just the way things are. It's unfair. Human beings are in a very funny position in life. T.S. Eliot once remarked that an orange is not burdened to sit somewhere and ask, why can't I be an apple? A cat doesn't sit somewhere and says, why can't I be a dog? Almost everything under the sun, except who and what they are. Human beings? No. You're looking for meaning and a purpose, identity, relevance, significance. We create all these elaborate meanings to things. The burden that Galileo imposes upon us is the following. And suppose all these different events. From the moment you are born to the time you die, you have to figure out who you are, what you are, You have to figure out your companion, who and what he or she is. You have to figure out your life, what you want to do with it. You got to figure out what to do with society. And if you have kids, you got to figure out what to do with the kids in a society. You also have to figure out what justice is, what truth is, what faith is. You have to figure out how you're able to save your soul, if you have any, in a single lifetime, as well as pursuing your own desires, wanting to do this and wanting to do that. See, for 1,000 years of the Dark Ages, none of us in this class were burdened in such a way. You are born for a reason, and once you die, you will stand before God. It's very simple. The white man is not evil. The black man is not evil. If you want to know why there is injustice, it's God. God creates everything. His hands are involved in everything you see down here. It's not capitalism, it's not communism. And if you want answers, you don't seek therapy. You don't read books. You take your issues directly to the church and to God. So remember, first, it's the bubonic plague that kills a whole host of people. And you want answers, but there are no answers. Then someone tells you, no one knows why you're here. No one knows why this is the way it is. No one knows where things are going. You just got to figure things out. The problem with Galileo is that Galileo can find paradise in his findings. He's a scientist. He's inspired by the things he finds. I'm not a scientist. I just want to believe in something. I just want to make sure that my life is going somewhere. Galileo destroys that for me. I don't read books because I enjoy reading. I read books because I want answers. And I want answers because I don't know. And I don't know, which makes me confused, fearful. But that wasn't the end of the story, because a few years later comes this man named Martin Luther. Up to this point, the Catholic Church had a tremendous amount of power. It had its hands in every aspect of human life. Martin Luther was this young kid, and his father wanted him to be a lawyer. It's a good business. But one day as he's walking home from school, the weather was a little rough, thunderstorm here and there, and the ancient people believed that if you see lightning, the gods are really, really upset. So Martin Luther sits and prays. He doesn't want to die. And he says, if my life is saved, if my life is spared, I will be a monk. Now, one of the things you need to understand about the Dark Ages is that when people make a promise, they keep it. Death do us part, it's a serious thing. It's not like today. His life, unfortunately for the Catholic Church, was spared. He goes home, tells the story to his father. He says, Dad, I promise God that if my life is spared, I will become a monk. I'm not going to be a lawyer. And his father is pissed. He's upset. Says, I can't go back on my promise. And he becomes a monk. Now, one of the things about the Catholic Church at this time is the following. They want to build churches. They want to expand. If you have a one-bedroom or you want to move into a two-bedroom, you need money. If you want to buy a house, you need money. If you want to expand somewhere and buy a few cars, you need money. And money just doesn't fall from the sky. So what does the Catholic Church do? You give me some cash, and we will speak to God about your soul. We'll tell God that so-and-so has given $1 million. So instead of sending that person directly to hell, why not just cook him a little bit in purgatory? And after 5 years, you can send him to paradise. Martin Luther, this young kid who's now a monk, very passionate, has a very intense relationship with God, or with religion or faith, says this is the wrong thing for the Catholic Church to do. And he doesn't want to fight the church. He just wants to correct some of their mistakes. But the Catholic Church picks a fight with him. And something really strange happens after a few weeks. A good amount of people begin to follow Martin Luther. For those of you who like revolutions, uprising, mass movements, you just need a spark. There's a good amount of anger inside people, anywhere, any age. All you need is someone who can open certain parts of you, grab that anger and bring it out, and then protect it with language, with ideas, with philosophy. And you will follow them. And so for the first time in Catholicism, something interesting happens. You have this huge, powerful opposition that say, we don't like the way Catholic Church is doing business. And now you have the rise of a brand new Christian tradition. We protest against the Catholic Church. Are you a Protestant? Are you a Catholic? First there is a bubonic plague, then there is Galileo telling you that you're going nowhere, and then there is Martin Luther who says the Catholic Church is wrong. So we have to recreate the image of Jesus Christ, reinterpret the Bible. Some years pass away, and you have all these different people from various corners of the Western world. They say it's no longer enough for us to have faith in God. We need to rationalize this. Remove emotions from religion. Look at it intellectually. But none of us in this class have the capacity to intellectualize religion. We want to have faith. We want to believe. We want to trust. I'm not Immanuel Kant. I'm not a Schopenhauer. I'm just a regular chap, confused about who I am and where my life is going. I want someone to tell me what to believe in. That's what I want. Don't ask me what love is. Just tell me you love me. That's all I want. But people are now forced to figure things out, and it's too much. And at this point, something really interesting happens. All of us live in small villages and towns, 200, 300 people, maybe 1,000. When you live in small villages, small towns, everybody knows everybody. Your name is valuable. You have a reputation to protect. More importantly, you have a last name. Your last name does not belong to you, it belongs to your father. You don't want to destroy the image of your father in your town. And if you live in this village, it means your father lived in this village, and your grandfather and great-grandfather. It means you're going to get married to someone from that village. They're not going to be a Jew or a Hindu or a Muslim. They're going to be a Christian. They're going to think like you, believe like you. We don't have feminism just yet. Women have only one function. You get married, you have kids, you have a house, you're a housewife. End of story. You don't have to figure out who you are, what you are. We're not yet at a point where women no longer trust men, so they need to go to school. They need to have a job. They need to have their own money, because men suck. It's a very cohesive environment. But all of a sudden, you're no longer having cities of 200 people. You're having cities, 500,000 people like Oakland. You know what that means? It means you walk among strangers. Nobody cares for you. Nobody knows you. If you get sick, who cares? If you die, who cares? It also means you're going to walk away from your parents. Why? Because a village of 1,000 people has only one Safeway, has only one bar, has only one movie theater. But when you go to New York, there are millions of bars and millions of movie theaters. In your village, you only have 10 things that you desire, only 10 things. When you go to New York, there are a million things you desire. And the more things you desire, the more confused you are, the more discontent you are, the more unhappy you are. But something amazing also happened. In your village, your salvation was God. In New York, your salvation are your desires. You can be happy in life. New York will give that to you. By this time, God doesn't really have very much power in human life. Doesn't occupy very much space in human psyche. Your life belongs to you, not God. In your village, you work for your father or you're for your uncle. They care for you. They love you. In New York, you're a stranger walking amongst strangers. And this is where Karl Marx comes in. There was a time where human life had meaning. You would come to class because you sought wisdom. You wanted to better your life. Not life what lives inside your pocket. I'm not talking about money. You wanted to enrich your intellect. You want to take care of your soul and your spirit. By the time Karl Marx comes into play, he comes to realize those things are long gone. Culture and society has only really one function. Remember the saying in the New Testament, what benefit is there for man to gain the whole world but lose his own soul? The truth is, by the time Karl Marx comes in, there is no soul. Soul is gone. Your life, your physical life is insecure. From the moment you wake up, you need to work up to the time. It's midnight, 1 in the morning. And for what? Pennies. Factories come about, but they make sure that you're always poor. As long as you're poor, you will not be autonomous. You will not be an individual. You will not be free to do as you please. They will own you. If you've seen the movie The First Matrix, there's a scene where Morpheus looks at Neo, Thomas Anderson, and says, Human beings are reduced to a Duracell battery, and once the energy has been sucked out of you, you'll be trashed. You're no longer useful to anyone, including yourself. Marx looks at the human beings and says, these are no longer human animals. These are no longer people with souls. These are what we call alienated selves. People who are strangers to themselves. Why the hell do you take this class? For what? A stupid A or a B or a C? You come to this class stupid and you leave stupid. All you have is an A or a B or a C. You waste 5 weeks of your life for a letter grade. And that's exactly what Marx was talking about. People work from the moment they wake up to the time to go to sleep, to pay rent, to pay food, to pay for gas. Next time you go out with someone, remember this history lesson I'm giving you tonight. They don't have it all together. None of our dates have it together. None of our companions have it together. And what happens when you become a stranger to yourself? You have a great amount of anger inside you. And what do you do with it? Well, nothing. You can't do much with it because you'll get fired from your job. Natural self for Marx is you have a belly, it's hungry, and you eat. You're a human being, you have urges, you have sex. You have a physical body, it needs to be active, so you work. These are natural, organic things. But the moment you have big cities and factories that treat people like animals, you have sex, it's because you're lonely. You have love because you're miserable, because you're depressed, because you're irrelevant, insignificant, because big cities rob you from your family. You don't get a chance to spend time with them, form relationships. There is no intimacy in big cities. Things move fast. And you don't work because it's an extension of your soul. Kind of like this class, you don't write essays because you're interested in the stuff. You gotta write because you need to get a grade. You don't write because you want understanding, because you want to transfer. Then comes this fellow, quite awful. Sigmund Freud, a beautiful human being, a great mind. He was devoted to understanding why human beings are the way they are. What is it about our psyches? Why are we so goddamn angry all the time? Why is there envy? Why is there jealousy? Why are we so violent? Why is it that we destroy everything that we create? The great amount of labor. Freud, of course, was no lightweight. 3 of his sisters were gassed during the Holocaust. When he was very, very young, he had a brother, Michael. And you know, when you're the first child, your parents give you 100% of their attention. So Freud prayed for his brother's death because he wanted all of his parents' attention. And God listened, and his brother died. And Freud never forgave himself because he believed that he was the cause of his brother's death. You want to know who you are? Not possible. Human beings forever will remain a mystery to themselves. There's a part of us that none of us have access to. You wake up in a good mood, 10 minutes later, you're in a foul mood. You're walking, you're calm, you're cool, you're stoic. All of a sudden, you're enraged, and you want to act out. If you have desires that come from nowhere, every human being for Freud is like a volcano ready to erupt. Every single one of us. And we're just waiting for a chance. For those in this class who are looking around Oakland and you see violence, you see cars going so fast on the highway, people without any mask just breaking into cars, broad daylight. This is what Freud was talking about. They remove domestication, they remove parents from the lives of kids, and what you have are just raw human beings. And they will do whatever. They will have no fear, no shame. They're not inhibited by anything. This is no different than being in a relationship, you know. You and your companion have some disagreements, arguments, but you tend to be somewhat passive. You always look the other way. And once in a while you realize that he comes home or she comes home and he says, "How you doing?" And you just lash out. And it comes from nowhere. The truth is, it's not that it hasn't come from anywhere. You've been repressing these emotions for the past 5 or 6 days or weeks or months, and now it comes out. That's who we really are. Life is dark, life is bleak, life is difficult, life is filled with misery. So what do we do to cope? You don't smoke weed because it's fun. What else can you do? Life is boring. It's frustrating. How the hell do you cope with the difficulties of life? You gotta numb yourself somehow. You don't drink because alcohol tastes good, because you want freedom from the burdens of life. You don't get married because you love. What the hell do you do with loneliness? And all of us, for Freud, have these ridiculous expectations. You want to have sex, but it needs to be with a good amount of love. You need to be just and compassionate and fair. And just in case you're not, you punish yourself. We are nothing but a bundle of conflicting emotions and desires. And there is no way out of this. None of us are artists. We don't create things because we're creative. We create because we're expressing the difficulties of life. Thomas Kincaid, for those of you who have seen his paintings, always the sun is out, beautiful waters, beautiful trees, middle of the hill, some forest, and there is this tiny little cross. Any of you walk around Oakland, see those things? Of course not. What else can we do? We create paradise on canvas. Life has no magic in it, but we have no choice but to create magic. We call it Harry Potter. We don't know what sort of emotions live inside us, but we know they trouble us, bother us, so we create inside and out too. We don't create Rambo because it's fun, because there's a good amount of injustice. What the hell can we do about the injustice? Nothing. So we create a cultural release. That's what we call it in sociology. Let's create Rambo, a group of people being taken as hostage. One man goes in there and saves them all. None of us have love in our lives, but watch the movie English Patient. And for the next 10 minutes after the show, you'll hold your companion's hand and you'll have deep dish Zachary's pizza. And you'll write poetry and you'll sing poetry. And then you have, of course, the 20th century and after. There is nothing left for us to believe in. Are you a boy or a girl? Who the hell knows? Is your marriage going to survive? Who the hell knows? Everything's up in the air. Can't trust anything anymore. Depression, loneliness, anger are the hallmarks of the 21st century. None of us in this class are sane. It takes a tiny little spark for us to go nuts. And you're not religious the way Dark Age people were religious. You have faith because you have to believe in something out of desperation. Look at the culture. It's secular. It's meaty. It's all flesh. It's all about tables and chairs.